They passed this, or tried to pass this in 2012. Well, we know when Sandy Hook took place in December of 2012, and all of these stage type events. And all of these things are covered under this act. So they made it legal to do these things. So this is basically tipping their hand. We can see what they were intending to do because they have passed this law, and now they're using this law to do those things. All right, so here it is. This is the first part where they're amending the law. Section 501. The Secretary and the Broadcasting Board of Governors are authorized to use funds appropriated or otherwise made available for public diplomacy information programs to provide for the preparation, dissemination, and use of information intended for foreign audiences abroad about the United States, its people, and its policies through press, publications, radio, motion pictures, the Internet, and other information media, including social media, and through information centers, instructors, and other direct or indirect means of communication. So here it is. They are able to make movies. They are able to make shows. They are able to produce news. Any number of these things would include Sandy Hook. It would include the Roanoke shooting. It would include the Oregon shooting. All of these things could be construed as media preparation. You could say, well, it's a movie. We're just making a mockumentary. It's a fake documentary. We're making a movie. This is a movie. This is a TV show. This is a television show we're making. It's a series. And we're using the news to make it dramatic. So they have legalized all of these types of things. And it says here it's for dissemination for foreign audiences. But that's simply not the case, because later on in this bill, in this law, it says this. The rule of construction. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit the Department or State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from engaging in any medium or form of communication, either directly or indirectly, because a United States domestic audience is or may thereby be exposed to program material or based on a presumption of such exposure. Such material may be made available within the United States and disseminated when appropriate pursuant to Sections 502 and 1005 from the original act that they're amending here. So they're saying, well, you know, if American people are going to come across this information anyway, you might as well just be allowed to do it in the United States. So initially, in the beginning of the law, they're saying this is for a foreign audience. But now in this section, they're saying, well, they're going to get exposed to this anyway, so go ahead and do that. So they're basically making this a domestic law where they can produce productions like Sandy Hook, like the Boston bombing, any of these motion pictures, any of these fraudulent events. And it says here, when appropriate, pursuant to Sections 502 or 1005. So let's take a look at that. Now, Section 502 says, nothing in this act shall be construed to give the Department a monopoly in the production or sponsorship on the air or shortwave radio broadcast programs, or a monopoly in any other medium of information. So they're saying they can't form a United States press, like they would own all the networks, that CBS, NBC, and all these types of networks would still be in private ownership. So they're trying to make it that the United States government doesn't have a monopoly, and that's better for the government. It's better for these propagandizing pieces that they're producing, because privately owned businesses producing these makes it a lot more believable than state-run media. You see this. So when they're talking about China or Russia having state-run media, they say, well, that's just coming from the government. But now they're able to produce these things. So that's not a problem having that section be honored, because that section actually helps. And this part also talks about this. This is Section 1005. In carrying out the provisions of this act, it shall be the duty of the Secretary to utilize to the maximum extent practicable the services and facilities of private agencies, including existing American press, publishing, radio, motion pictures, and other agencies. So this was originally constructed, this part of this original law, to say the government can have its own media. And so you have to give your information for dissemination to private media agencies. And if you give them this media, then they can report it with their perspective. So it takes it away from the government. This was an anti-propaganda act. So now they're saying, well, these two provisions have to be honored, but they've made it legal to produce propagandized acts, and now we have basically a fascist government where the corporations and the government are all together, the media and the government are all together, and they're one unit. So all of these provisions now in the original act are going to help them propagandize the American people. So what they're basically saying here is, now you have the right to produce whatever kind of media you want, and it can be truth, it could be fictional, it could be anything, to propagandize the American people and people abroad, and you can turn it over to the private networks and they can run it, and it's all legal. So this makes Sandy Hook, this makes all these types of things legally produced Hollywood productions that the American people think are real and the people in the world think are real. So think about this. Why would they do this? Why would they pass this law if they weren't going to use it? And now we see all these crisis actors. We saw these propagandizing pieces, and they've emerged as something that they are doing on a regular basis, and they all came when they were trying to pass this law and after they've passed this law. So you can see this. I've made a recent video about how our laws are basically being written by Hollywood, our social policies, what we're allowed to say and what we're not, whether it's Hollywood-produced movies. Now, a lot of these Hollywood-produced movies that are pro-spy, that are pro any of these types of government actions. I think the name of the movie was Zero Dark 40 or something like that. I think it won an Academy Award. And it was basically propagandizing that whole fake thing that happened when they killed bin Laden. And you see government talking points, political talking points, showing up in all of these spy movies, all of these war movies that they make. They're putting it out there. That is propaganda. So there's propaganda within our films, and there's propaganda in make-believe life, and then in reality TV programs, and then these fake news stories, these fake these real-looking events to most people that have been faked and have been staged and been crisis acted, and these are all legal. So then you have to ask yourself, if you're a person that thinks, well, these things can't be real, because why would the government do it? Well, why would they make it legal to do it if they weren't going to do it? Why would they repeal an act, an ancient act from over 60 years ago that was put in place as an anti-communist act and an anti-government act, and now they're repealing this so many years later, and they're pushing all these bizarre agendas through the media and through movies and television programs and all these types of things. So there's no reason for anyone to believe they wouldn't use this. Why would they go through the trouble of passing a law that they weren't going to use?